very warm morning, very warm good afternoon to you all. And sir, today I am here. I'm Sushant Sachi, and I'm here to speak in favor of the motion. CA, the legislation itself has faced the severe fear mongering, which was passed by the Parliament on 11 December 2019, which subsequently got the presidential assent. The Citizenship Amendment Act is basically a limited amendment which tends to focus and provide citizen to the particular recognized persecuted minorities Hindu, Buddhist, Sikh, Jain, Parsi, and Christian coming from the three states, that is the Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. And basically a specific cutoff date has been assigned, that is 31st December 2019. And any minority entering prior to that very particular date shall meant to be the specific beneficiary of this very legislation. Now, coming to the constitutional validity of this very particular legislation, then the first and foremost thing is that this legislation is being challenged on the grounds of Article 14, which is the most ambiguous thing, as the Indian Constitution specifically mentions citizenship in Part 2 of Indian Constitution, that too from Article 5 to Article 11. And Article 14 is of Part 3rd, is dealing with the fundamental rights. But still, if we further go to the ambiguousness of the Article 14 and the test of reasonableness, then there certainly shall be a question of sampada, that is treating equals equally, and the trigger of motivation behind this is Shias and Ahmadiyas, in which one is the sectarian while another is the religious basis. So the reasonableness cannot be done, as both are part to each other. So there is a segment in the society which basically thinks tough to get logic behind the selection of community. So I think the selection of the community based on the past obligations that we have done, in which, apart from the civilizational aspect of India, the 1950 Nehru-Liaquat Pact, who serves as a critical hostage theory, and the philosophy of that very particular act subscribes to the philosophy of this legislation. And if we see the data, then the population of non-Muslim in the divided Pakistan is dwindled from 3.5 to 1.8%, in Bangladesh 20 to 10%, and the ugly head of Taliban is known to all. So I think there is a logic behind selection of this community. But if we still go for the dynamism, then my bare point is this very particular legislation is not at all dynamic in nature, as this legislation is a legislation of inclusion, not the exclusion, and fulfilling all the test of intelligible differentia without any over or under inclusion. The safeguard of this legislation is 6B. Section 6B of this very particular legislation puts obligation over minority even after the process of naturalization, which provides a positive hit to the legislation. And so in all, this legislation has been grossly misunderstood by the term exclusion rather than the term inclusion. And if still any minority, irrespective of their caste, creed, culture, community, their state, they still can enter India and they can seek asylum by the provisions mentioned in Article 11 of Indian Constitution, 1955 Citizenship Amendment Act, and the Foreigners Act of 1946. So in my opinion, this whole legislation and this whole monolithic approach has rendered and is downright stupid and irrelevant of the basic fact, as hinching and lynching this with the nationwide NRC is completely ignorant, as this is a proper legitimate inclusion legislation, not exclusion. Thank you. Over to you, Rishu.
Good afternoon to everyone. This is Rishu Kumari speaking against the motion. The Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019 abruptly seeks to amend the definition of citizenship by inclusion of illegal migrants for Hindu, Sikh, Jain, Parsis, Buddhist, and Christian by excluding Islam from a particular group of Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh and thus makes a question of constitutional concern. The legislation applies to those who are then forced to seek shelter in India due to persecution on the grounds of religion by explicitly excluding the other communities. The legislation legally seeks to establish Muslim as second-class citizen of India by providing a privileged treatment to other communities. And this whole procedure grossly violates the philosophy of the Constitution, the basic structure of the Constitution, and the fundamentals of human rights. Thus, the legislation holds no water of constitutionality in it. Now, coming to the constitutional aspects of this legislation, it clearly violates Article 14 of the Indian Constitution, which says equality before law or equal protection of law. Equality before law means everyone is equal. That means we will not provide anybody privilege. But here the government is providing a clear-cut privilege to a particular group of the society, and that too from a particular state. And now, if there is a question of sampada, that is treating equals equally, and even we see the triggers of motivation of Shias and Ahmadiyas in Pakistan and Afghani in Afghanistan are expressed to be sectarian, but more of it a religious basis, and that too without data. The logic of the government has been that the religious persecution of these 6 communities amounts to reasonable classification under Article 14, and the rationale for not including Muslim has been that these 3 countries declared Islam as their state religion, and thus Muslims do not face any persecution, a claim that is not backed by any data. So does the fact that a nation has a state religion amounts to reasonable classification on its own? And for a secular country like India, does it matter that a nation has a state declared state religion? Now, if there is the dynamics of this country is being affected because first thing, the preamble of our constitution says, we the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a secular, sovereign, socialist, democratic and republic, and this CA is clearly against the secular fabric of this nation. And in the context of this bill, the difference between a refugee and an infiltrator is very clear, that a non-Muslim person from outside India is a refugee and a Muslim person from outside India is an infiltrator. So in which article is it written that India is a natural home for other non-Muslim religion? How can you consider them refugee, and how can you call Muslim as an infiltrator? And in the provisions of this CAA, it puts some obligation towards this citizenship, but the question is how the union shall differentiate between an infiltrator and a refugee who have border disputes with India. So how will you decide that you will give citizenship to these 6 communities and exclude Muslims? Because the point is, Rohingyas are also persecuted in Myanmar, Baluchs and Ahmadiyas are also persecuted in Pakistan, and India in its official statement at United Nations acknowledged that Pakistan carries out atrocities on its Baluch population. So by this bill, India have given a clean chit to Pakistan. So how did you choose that you will give citizenship to these 6 communities and exclude Muslims? So in my opinion, the legislature have forgotten the Rohingyas and the atrocities done by the Buddhists. And with this bill, the legislature have made a specific class for Muslim and put a cloak of separation over some communities. Therefore, this self-destructive theocratic approach towards the citizenship proving to be fatal towards the democratic essence of the nation, and this zeal of the legislature have finding a mental this act, in my opinion, can be called as a perfect example of missing the system of checks and balance, because the government is very finitely fails in proving a balance between a civil rights and religious faith. And if a religion is allowed to color civil rights, India's democracy will be imperiled. Thank you.
I thank both the team members. Now I would like to continue forward. Let's start the slot 4 right now. Thank you both of you. Union. Starting with the 4th slot.
You may both please leave. Team 074, please exit the room. Okay, so just to be clear to judges, this was team number 074 from slot 3, and now we'll begin with slot 4. Okay.
A very good afternoon to all presented here. Dr. Gurjeet Singh, respected Advocate Mr. Anil Mehta, and participants from various law institutions of India. I, Ashid Ral, welcome you all to the 3rd National Virtual Debate Competition 2020, organized by Center for Legal Studies at Geeta Ratan International Business School. We have the judges as Dr. Gurjeet Singh and respected Advocate Mr. Anil Mehta. I would specially thank to the respected judges to spare their precious time. It is requested to all the participants not to leave the virtual debate room and to stay here until their turn comes. Center for Legal Studies at Geeta Ratan International Business School encourages healthy discussion and exchange of ideas among students and provides them the platform to voice out their opinions on current national and global issues and exploring various solutions to the crisis. Before moving forward for the preliminary round, session 4, I would like to present the general guidelines and working of the virtual debate competition. In this virtual debate competition, number 1, there will be the draw of lots to decide the order in which the teams will be coming up to enter the virtual room to present their debate. During the debate, time left will be shown on the screen at 2 intervals. Firstly, when there will be 3 minutes left, and secondly, when the time will get over. The total time that has been allotted to each team is just 8 minutes, and this is the decision of the team that what is the limit for speaker 1 and speaker 2. but the minimum time for a speaker is 2 minutes. Speaker 1 will debate for the motion and Speaker 2 will debate against the motion. Rebuttals will be included in the 8 minutes given to each team. The team score will be calculated by adding both the team members' individual scores. The language for the debate competition shall be English only. Use of webcam or face camera while speaking is mandatory for every participant. Reading from any written document is prohibited, and if it is observed by any judge or the organizer, then the team shall be disqualified. Usage of any abusive language or obscene language shall implicate immediate disqualification of the candidature. Center for Legal Studies at Vietnam International Business School shall have sole discretion to access the penalties or to disqualify teams for any failure in abiding by any of the foregoing rules. All team members must refrain from disclosing the identity of their institution at any time and in any manner during the entire competition. Non-compliance with this rule shall result in immediate disqualification of the team. The decision of CLS Gibbs in this regard shall be final and binding. Now, moving forward to the debate competition for the draw lots, I am taking out the team slots for slot 4. And the first team coming out to be is team 3NDC003. The second team to be is team 3NDC078. The third team for this will be team 3NDC080. Fourth team in this regard will be 3NDC072, and the fifth team for the fifth team for the debate competition will be 3NDC054. We also have a sixth team here in this slot 4, and that will be 3NDC018. I again repeat the order. The first team in the order will be 003. Second team will be 078, third team will be 080, fourth team is 072, fifth team is 054, and the sixth team is 018. Now, moving forward to the debate competition, I wish all the best to all the participants, and I seek permission from the judges to start with it.
Yeah, please start.
Thank you, sir. One reminder to all, Speaker 1 will be for the motion, Speaker 2 will be against the motion, and there will be 2 slides. The first slide will be at the interval of 3 minutes left, and the second will be when the time gets over. I would like the team members of team 003 to please proceed with their submissions.
Team 003, please raise your hands. I repeat again, team 003, please raise your hands. Team 003, please raise your hands.
Am I audible now, sir?
Yes, you are audible now. Thank you.
Okay, so shall I begin?
Exactly.
Okay. So, fine. In the words of Honorable former Prime Minister Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, I quote, "Ignorance is always afraid to change," unquote. A very good afternoon to one and all present over here with me. On this day, I, code number 3NDC080A, I'm going to speak for the motion on the topic, the Citizenship Amendment Act being constitutionally valid. Now, let me begin by stating that the CAA answers to each and every false narrative that is currently sparking violence all across the nation. In fact, CAA will help thousands of persecuted immigrants hailing from the three nations, namely Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, who are currently seeking refuge in India. Now, talking in terms of law, Section 2 of the Citizenship Amendment Act seeks to insert a proviso to the definition of illegal migrant in the Parent Act of 1955, thereby stating that provided that any person who entered into India on or before the 31st day of December 2014 belonging to either of the five communities, namely Sikh, Hindu, Christian, Parsi, Buddhist, or Jain, and hailing from either Pakistan or Bangladesh or Afghanistan, shall not be treated as an illegal migrant for the purposes of this act. Now, I would like to highlight one single point here, that nowhere throughout the entire act of CAA has the term Muslim been used for even once. And neither any of the provision of CAA hampers or violates the right enshrined under Article 14 or 15 or 25 of the Indian Constitution. Now, talking about Article 14, which is the right to equality and equal protection of laws. We all know that Article 14 clearly envisages the concept of what we call as reasonable classification. Now, for any classification to be reasonable, two criteria have to be met with necessarily. The first one of which is that it should be founded on the principle of intelligible differentia that distinguishes people who are being so classified from the people who are being left out or not counted within the purview of such a classification. And the second one is that such differentia should have a reasonable nexus or a relation or a reasonable relation to the object that is sought by the act. In the present situation, the CAA meets both of these criteria perfectly and very well. I will explain how. The first one, which was intelligible differentia. Now, the persecuted minority communities hailing from all these three nations herein mentioned above, namely Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, can be clearly distinguished from the rest of the Muslim citizens from all those three countries themselves. Secondly, the object is to provide such minority communities permanent protection by virtue of giving them citizenship to a secular nation, which is India, of course, and which is also their logical nation before the partition took place. It was also their logical nation in the year before 1947 as well. Now, coming to the question as to why Muslim community, in particular the Hazras, Shias, and Ahmadiyas, why are they excluded from the purview of CAA? Well, the answer to that is really simple and is equally justifiable. As any part of Muslim majority being persecuted in an officially declared Islamic state is a matter of their internal affairs. And how can we ascertain that these three nations are Islamic states? Article 2 of each of the constitution of these states mentions that the state religion shall be Islam. And furthermore, there is one more point that obviously comes to my mind whenever I, read about these kind of things. That when even other Islamic states refuse to accept such Muslims to be a part of their nation as citizens, then expecting then expecting only India to do so, how can that be justified? Of course, that would definitely defy logic. So in the simplest terms possible, I would like to herein make my submission that the main reason as to why Muslims are not included within the purview of CAA is simple, because they are not a religious minority in any of the three nations herein mentioned above. So those who are eligible will now be becoming full-fledged citizens of India and shall be leading a better quality and a dignified life, which has also been promised by the sphere of international law. So I would hereby like to conclude my speech by saying that CAA does not hamper either Article 14 or 15 or any of the other provisions of the Indian Constitution or even international law. With this, I rest my case. Over to you.
A very warm welcome to one and all present here. I, CNDC 080B, would like to take this opportunity to express my views against the motion. I am proud to belong to a nation that has sheltered persecuted and refugees of all religions and of all nations of the earth. Swami Vivekananda said this in Chicago in the year 1893. The recent amendment to the Citizenship Act is betrayal of his ideals of Hindu civilization and practice, because he was talking about a vision of India that we didn't care what your background is. If you're being persecuted or if you needed refuge, we'll offer you home, no questions asked. But that era has gone. See, the Citizenship Amendment Act is also an assault on the Constitution of India. It does not qualify on the existing constitutional provisions. It violates the spirit of preamble of the Constitution of India, wherein it has been stated that we, the people of India, have solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, and democratic republic. Secularism is the basic ingredient of the Constitution of India, hence the religious basis of CAA violates this ideal. CAA goes against Article 14 and 15 of the Constitution of India. Article 14 grants every person and not merely every citizen the right to equality and equal protection of laws within the territory of India. My first argument is that it excludes religious groups. Jews are excluded. People say that Jews have Israel, but I would like to say that Christians and Buddhists also have their own countries. But we have included Christians and Buddhists, but we have excluded Jews. We have excluded atheists, people who believe that there is no God. We have excluded other categories of Muslims that can be considered as minorities in their own countries, like Ahmadiyas in Pakistan and Hazaras in Afghanistan. And it is no answer to say that, well, these countries have their own established religion, because there are other countries also which have their own established religion, like United Kingdom, where the Christianity through the Church of England is the established religion. So merely because a country has an established religion, what we call a theocratic state, that does not necessarily mean that it is unsecular. There are other countries in the neighborhood of India which are also excluded. Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh are not the only neighboring countries that have state religion. There are other countries also, such as Bhutan and Sri Lanka, which have specific state religion, which is Buddhism. And there is clear evidence to show that Tamils in Sri Lanka and Christians in Bhutan have been religiously persecuted. So the religious discrimination is violative of Article 14 of the Constitution. Moreover, I will say my second argument is that it is unconstitutional because of the time limit, because the residence requirement in India has been reduced by this amendment. Initially, for naturalization process, the residence requirement was only 11 years. But if a person falls within the Citizenship Amendment Act, then 5 years is the naturalization. For example, let us take an example of Parsis. Parsis originally fled in Iran, and there are still Parsis in Iran that are religiously persecuted. Let's say a Parsi who is religiously persecuted comes to India, and then he will have to wait for 11 years to be a naturalized citizen, whereas a Parsi who lives in Afghanistan will have to wait for just 5 years to be a naturalized citizen. So this does not make any sense. My other argument is the opt-out date is just 31st December 2014. So there is a misconfusion regarding the applicability of this act. It is wrongly interpreted as a gateway of providing citizenship to all non-Muslims from Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Bangladesh for all time to come. It only provides citizenship to those who have entered India on or before 31st December 2014 and not after that. And to those who have been given legal protection under the existing laws are allowed to stay in India on long-term visa. So this rule undermines the ostensibly humanitarian objective of law, that is to protect the persecuted on account of religion. Then why close the doors on 31st December 2014? Last, I would like to say that it also violates the United Nations Convention. It violates Article 15 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which states that every person has a right to nationality, and every person shall not be arbitrarily deprived of this right and not denied the right to change his nationality. So Citizenship Amendment Act is blatantly against India's commitment under existing international laws by allowing citizenship to a particular class of persons and disallowing it to others. Hence, I would like to conclude that Citizenship Amendment Act is indeed a threat to the secular nature of our constitution. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So am I visible and audible?
054B. Yes. Team 0548, please turn your video on. Team 0548, please turn your video on. I repeat, 0548, please turn your video on.
Sir, am I visible and audible?
Yes. So you both can start now.
Am I visible and clearly audible?
Yes, yes, you are. Yes, you are.
So, can I get it down? I shall begin in 3, 2, 1. India is not a Hindu Rashtra. Constitution of India does not intend to make it a Hindu Rashtra, and CAA is not an effort to make it a Hindu Rashtra. Honorable Chairperson, we have to make some broad dimensions to understand the motion of the topic today. Feeble beliefs have to be replaced with healthier habits, and irrelevant assumptions have to be replaced with relevant realities. Our nation would reach to the zenith of secularism, not only under the twilight of the fake accusations given by the opponents, but under the broad daylight of truth. And Honorable Chairperson, it would be the very same truth that would guide the House today. Honorable Chairperson, today I stand here to speak in favor of the controversial motion of the House. And I call the motion of the House controversial because it has been nefariously used by the opponents to mislead and bamboozle the House today. Honorable Chairperson, they say to us that CAA is excluding, is discriminating against the Muslim, but the fact of the matter is that CAA not even talks about the Muslims, because CAA is not an exclusive amendment. It is an inclusive amendment. If I select 4 out of 5, that does not mean I have said to the 5th one that go outside, and that has to be clearly understood. I guess my worthy opponents have succumbed to the blissful ignorance of the foreign media. Honorable Chairperson, they kept on saying that CAA would take away the citizenship of the Indian nationals, but the fact of the matter is that CAA is not even applying to the Indians. They say to us that CAA would eventually turn up to saffronization of India, but the fact of the matter is that CAA includes 6 communities, including an Abrahamic religion, Christianity. Honorable Chairperson and my worthy opponents, we have to understand the truth, and I request my worthy opponents to listen me carefully, for they might confuse my logic with radical. The truth is that CAA is not a constitutional amendment, it is a legal amendment, it is the ordinary law, and therefore after the landmark judgment of Indira Nehru Gandhi versus Raj Narayan, the Supreme Court of India held that any law to be constitutional has to pass 2 tests. The first, that the parliament should be competent to pass that legislation, and second, that should not infringe any fundamental right. To begin with, according to Schedule 7, List 1, Entry 17, the Parliament has the power to make laws in regard of citizenship. And Article 11 and 246 also empowers the Parliament to make law for the matter of citizenship. And at the same time, talking about the fundamental rights, Honorable Chairperson, after the landmark judgment of the state of West Bengal versus Anwar Ali Khan, the Supreme Court of India held that as far as Article 14 is concerned, we have to follow the twin test, and the twin test says that it should have intelligible differentia and the reasonable nexus. Selection of particular minority who have been continuously being persecuted by the majority is not a discrimination, and this is not me. It was the Supreme Court in the case of Dalmia versus Justice Tendulkar who said that deliberately. And as far as the reasonable nexus is concerned, we are taking the 3 neighbor countries who have been persecuted in the name of religion. Honorable Chairperson, now we have to increase the diaspora of our discussion today. It's not only the national laws, but also the international convention that we have taken into firm cognizance. As far as Article 14, 15 of the UDHR or Article 21, Clause 3 of the ICCPR 1976 is concerned, it is the India that is fully lifting up its compatibility to make that laws and conventions inactive. And Honorable Chairperson, though I agree that India is not a theocratic nation, but we also have to understand a vehement fact that these religions, the majority of these religions have actually originated from India. So if it's not a religion, we can still admit that it's a cultural heritage. And India, by all means, have all the rights to protect the cultural heritage of its nation. At the same time, Honorable Chairperson, we also have to understand that we live in a country where we have given refuse to many others. I know my worthy opponent were kept on talking about Ahmadiyyas, Hazariyas, but the fact of the matter is that even for them, there have been no single registered case. For that matter, we could have taken into cognizance. They talked about Tamils, but the fact of the matter is that blissful ignorance failed to address the fact that more than 4,000 people have received the citizenship belonging to the Tamil of the Sri Lanka. To be honest, we have to understand that this particular law deals with the 3 countries and not any other countries. And as far as those people are concerned, in due time, it would take other steps to bring them back. But as far as the constitutionality of this particular statute is concerned, we cannot have futile arguments, Honorable Chairperson. So therefore, as I tend to end up my arguments, I would say to my worthy opponents that if you can't color the page, please don't spill the ink. Because it is very easy to sit within the 4 walls and talk about the secularism. But the fact of the matter is that even today, more than 20 girls daily are converted, raped, and forced to convert into Islam in the state of Pakistan and Afghanistan and Bangladesh combined. And for that matter, they need justice. They need me and you to raise their voice, and they need a judgment and law that should protect their interests, because it was not their fault. It was the fault of our brutal history that separated both of the nations. They all wanted peace and they deserve peace. So, Honorable Chairperson, long live peace, long live secularism, and long live the truth that is enshrined under CAA. Thank you so much.
May I start? Am I loud and clear?
Yes, very much. Loud and clear.
Thank you. All right. An excellent speech, if I may say so, Honorable Chairperson, an excellent speech of the members of the government. But their selective and mechanistic perception of today's motion encircles their infallibility and requires a dissection of a sensitive law through more holistic and organic approach to examine its constitutionality. First things first, Citizenship Amendment Law fails to measure up to the standard of equality envisaged under the Constitution of India. It seeks to amend the definition of an illegal migrant so that people from 6 exclusive religious communities who are no longer subjected to the ambit of an amended definition of an illegal migrant are provided with an accelerated path to citizenship with naturalization requirement of only 5 years instead of 11. Thus, with this discriminatory framework, this law stands in harmony with Israeli law of return, which guarantees Israel to be a natural home of all Jews, irrespective of their place of birth. But India, on the other hand, is not a natural home for a set of selective religions of the world. And that's why it stands in stark contrast to the very value of secularism that is an inherently a foundational idea of our Indian democracy and our Indian constitution. Honorable Chairperson, the aim of achieving substantive equality provides for the scope of permissible differentiation that is again grounded on 2 bases as provided by the court in Budhan Chaudhary versus State of Bihar. That is, A, classification must be based on intelligible differentia. B, there must be nexus between the basis of classification and the object of an act which is under consideration. Further, an additional imperative is that the objective of law must itself serve as a legitimate aim of the state. While putting Citizenship Amendment Law in this test, it makes 3 separate classifications. Firstly, distinguishing migrants from 3 separate countries from rest of the world. Secondly, making special privileges to these migrants and providing them earlier citizenship. And lastly, it fails the very test of reasonable classification that itself means that is a class legislation instead of a secular aim that we are providing for. Lastly, I would like to conclude my speech that it is in stark contrast to Bangkok principles that has been agreed by India to accept its duty of non-discrimination in 1966 towards refugees. Thus, this citizenship amendment law stands in opposition to the very idea of legal scrutiny that we are aiming for the organic approach that we have started. Thank you.
Okay, can you mention the code? What were the code of the last presentation?
It's 054.
It's 054.
545. Okay, fine. Thank you.
Okay, 054, you can be EM here. Okay, code 018, 018 A and B, please join. Please raise your hand. Code 018 A and B. You're visible now. Okay. Okay, 018.
Hello?
Yeah, yes, you're visible now. 018 A.
Hello, should I start?
No, please wait for a partner.
Okay, sir.
Please coordinate with the partner and tell her to turn her video on.
She's having connectivity issues.
Okay, that's fine.
Am I visible?
I'm sorry you're not visible, but you're audible to us.
Am I not visible?
Yes, now you're visible. So both of you can start now.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am here to speak in the favor of Citizenship Amendment Act 2019. CAA basically aims at fast-tracking the grant of Indian citizenship to the religious minorities from the
Okay, so yeah, she's left the room. She's joining again, and I'm sorry, this time will be counted in your 8 minutes.
but it got disconnected.
Yes, I realize that. Please continue.
CAA aims at fast-tracking the grant of Indian citizenship to the religious minorities from the neighborhood Muslim majority nations of India. Okay, so who have come to India before 31st December 2014. It aimed at granting the citizenship to the minority religions of Sikh, Hindu, Parsi, Christian, Buddhist, and Jain who have been residing in these neighbor nations of Muslim majority. Now, why these three nations and why only these 6 minority religions? Basically, Bangladesh and Pakistan have a history of partition with the India, and they were a part of the undivided India. And Afghanistan, there have a lot of migration between Bangladesh and Pakistan. Now, hello.
Yes, please go on. We can hear you. Please go on. We can hear you. Please go on.
Now, why only these 6 have been considered? Because they were stuck on the other side of the nation of the border during the partition, and they were highly tortured there. They have no human rights, no religious rights, no property rights. So they are residing there for 15 to 20 years in ancestral land, and they have the right to get the citizenship over here.
Against motion, history of migration is the history of world. You can manage it, but you cannot control it. In a democracy which ensures right to dissent to every citizen, it's surely non-negotiable and non-negotiable rule. The act is brazenly discriminatory, unequal, and unconstitutional. The law itself, in its intent and wording, signals out a community on the basis of religion in a country wherein the constitution itself guarantees inequality and
inequality and no discrimination on the basis of caste, creed.
018, can you hear? Team 018, A and B.
Hello?
Can you hear? Please turn your videos on.
I have turned my video on.
Okay, your partner, she's not on.
She's not here.
Actually, ma'am, we are running short of time, and we need
018, please turn your video on. 018B, please turn your video on.
Am I visible?
Yes, now you're visible. Please continue.
Oh, what the?
I would like to carry for.
Please go on. Please go on. Your time is running. Please.
Sir, she just left the room.
Please go on. Your time is running.
Okay.
Yeah.
Point is. Okay, so those who say that India, why only these minorities and not others? So there have been a lot of minorities, oppressed minorities in the whole world. India can become secular by those oppressed minorities in the world. Moreover, we need to understand our limitations and fulfill our constitutional commitment through political convincing and strategy. Article 14 talks about Indian citizen, but this is not an unconstitutional because this is have nothing to do with Indian citizens. It is basically giving citizenship to the non.
Okay, so due to technical issues, we'll have to move to the further team. I think they've entered again. Team 018A. Please turn the video on once more.
Waiting for.
Team 018A.
It is also
Can you hear us?
requested to team number 060. Please be available.
Okay, I think we'll have to conclude here only, and we'll move on again to the next team. That is the first team, the team 003. So the team that was not able to earlier join, the first team of slot 4, team 003. I repeat, the first team, that is the team 003. Please raise your hands. Team 003, first please turn your camera on.
Am I audible and visible, sir?
Yes, you are. Please, are you A or B? Please state it.
I'm A.
Okay, you are 003A. Please tell the partner to also join.
Yes, sir. She's coming.
Okay, 003 P. Please turn the video on. I repeat, 003B. Please turn the video on. Uh, 003A, please coordinate with the partner and tell her to turn the video on.
Yeah.
Team 003, please turn your videos on.
Sir, she is joining.
She has joined, just her video is off. She's in the room right now.
Sir, please give her the instructions. I think so. She
Okay,
will
so that's fine. Okay, so I'm typing my number here in the chat box. Please tell her to call me.
कहाँ है के बगल में ऑप्शन? Am I audible now? Yeah.
Hello. Am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are. You guys are visible now. Yeah.
So,
Please,
shall I start?
Please start. Please start.
A very good afternoon to the respected judges and audience. I am Team 003 going to speak for the motion that is Citizenship Amendment Act is constitutional and it doesn't affect our Muslims, minorities or their citizenship. We are from the nation where the concept of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam is evolved. Even this concept is more important in 21st century. We always come forward to help the world whenever they need us. Although India is not the part of 1951 refugee protocol, but it always provides asylum to a large number of migrants from our neighboring countries. I'm not promoting any migration through this quote. I just wanted to remind ourselves about the golden hearts that we used to have. I will address and cover my whole debate in 3 points. Citizenship Amendment Act is giving citizenship to the Sikh minorities, Sikh, Jain, Buddhist, Hindu, Parsi, and Christians from 3 Islamic countries, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh, who have been living in India since or before December 2014. The point number 1, it excludes the tribal areas covered under Schedule 6 and the area covered under Inner Line Permit. So it is not a threat to our culture, uniqueness, and minorities of Northeast. We will not lose our uniqueness or culture because India is known for unity and diversity. So they will easily get mixed with us. The point number 2 is Citizenship Amendment Act is constitutional and it doesn't discriminate anyone. Article 14 picks up on 2 parts. Second part, that is equal protection of laws, under which rule of law says equal should be treated equally and unequal should be treated unequally. And here the reasonable differentiation is permissible. So here the intelligible differentia is minorities from the states who have declared state religion, and it excluded Muslims because they are Islamic countries. And many people were talking about the discrimination among Ahmadis and Shias and Hazras from Pakistan and Afghanistan, Rohingyas and Tamils from Myanmar and Sri Lanka. And as per the law of constitution, we don't have to redress all the wrongs in order to redress some wrongs. In India also, we see discrimination within caste and religion, but our law doesn't discriminate. In these countries, people are discriminated by law itself. Recently, a professor in Pakistan got death sentence for blasphemy because he wrote something online that religion didn't like. Luckily, this is not the scenario in India. And that proves the provision has nexus with the differentia, and CAA doesn't violate Article 15 because Article 15 talks about citizens of India while CAA only talks about non-citizens, and it doesn't hamper anyone's right under Article 21 as their right to life or liberty. As anyone can enter in India irrespective of their religion by following the due process. So CAA passes the test of constitutionality. And the point number 3 is it is based on religious persecution. It is not about to open the gate for religious migration, and it has a deadline of 2014. So it will not increase further migration. And according to the report of Intelligence Bureau, they are just 30,000 in numbers. So number of them are not the issue. So I would like to conclude by saying that neither Citizenship Amendment Act is unconstitutional, nor it will affect our minorities or Muslims. It will not snatch their citizenship because it is made for giving citizenship, not for snatch. Thank you. Over to you.
Good afternoon, all the dignitaries and my fellow debaters. I am against the motion. I have divided my speech into 4 parts. First, what is CAA? CAA is Citizenship Amendment Act, which will provide citizenship to 6 minorities from Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Bangladesh through fast-track citizenship rule. Now, this is briefly about CAA. Now, second point is what are the disadvantages which India is going to face after CAA? So first, it will impact the Muslim community legally as well as psychologically. First, legally. CAA will give citizenship to non-Muslim migrants from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. On the other hand, Muslim migrants who even come in our country by following all the protocols, they have to wait for the same citizenship which our government is giving to non-Muslim migrants for more years. Is it not discriminatory? Only on the basis of religious persecution or fear of religious persecution, they are giving citizenship to the non-Muslim migrants. So my question is, is it necessary that Muslim minorities are not facing religious persecution in the same countries? For example, Shias and Ahmadiyas are also Muslim, but they are not considered as Muslim in Pakistan and facing religious persecution from years. Is it not discriminatory? Yes, it is. It is clear violation of Article 14 that says that all the people should be treated equally in India. And it is clearly written in that article that all the people also include migrants. Now, the psychological factor. We are a country where there are a lot of instances like Gujarat riots, anti-Muslim riots in Kolkata, etc., due to which our minority, that is Muslim, already feel insecure in our country. On the other hand, if our government is passing such laws where they are excluded, totally excluded, the psychological effect is that they will these such laws will make them feel as second-class citizen of our own country. Therefore, this is danger for the secularity of our own country. Now, second disadvantage is that it will increase or make our country overcrowding because this will motivate further migration, and secondly, it will increase unemployment, poverty, and racism, and many more. And lastly, it will hamper the unity and diversity culture of India. Now, the third point is whether it is constitutional or not. So clearly, I have 2 points. First, it is against the Article 14, and second, there is a proper procedure to follow while making a law, which was not followed while making this law, because in over a night, if our government is making law and said, okay, now you have to follow this law, this is not the proper way. Therefore, it is unconstitutional, and I would like to end my point by asking a question. Whom should our government take care first? Our own citizens or the citizenship of such countries with whom our international relationships are not even good? Here I rest my case. Thank you.
By this, we come to an end of this prelim round, session 4. On behalf of CLSJM, I would like to thank the respected judges for sparing their valuable time, patiently listening, and for judging the session, and our best wishes to the participants also. Thank you all, stay safe, and have a nice day. Thank you once again.
Okay, thank you so much. So the judges can send the mark sheet to the same email ID from which they received it. Thank you so much, sir.